Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today is episode number 29, a personal story about Kundalini and spiritual awakenings. Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I am excited to share with you about my current spiritual awakening process. After listening to my last few podcasts, I can feel that the energy of what's coming through on the podcast, as well as how I'm coming through, has been very altered compared to earlier podcasts. And I want to talk about that. And I want to share a little bit about what I'm going through on a personal level because this topic is important in the big picture of things. And yeah, that's what we're here to do. So, over the last few months, I've been sharing on the podcast about my adventures through intentional ego death and existential crisis and all of the things that go alongside that process. Today, I'm going to give you a little bit more background from where this whole thing started, as well as earlier iterations of the ego death and awakening process. Specifically, what I'm going through currently would be known as a Kundalini awakening. And I don't know much about the history of Kundalini. My experience with it has been largely personal. I have no background knowledge, no training. I've never even done Kundalini yoga. So today I'm really going to share with you just firsthand experience instead of like background and history and what people typically experience and stuff like that. So, what I do know is that most people have Kundalini come up as a result of an intentional practice like Kundalini yoga or a lot of meditation, breath work, psychedelics, sometimes shamanic work. And then you can have like a spontaneous initiation into Kundalini through some kind of major trauma or near death experience or life crisis. Um, I believe that mine came through divine intervention, but definitely in combination with working with plant medicine, and as a result of all of the personal work that I've been doing on myself over the last decade or so. So, ooh, I'm not a beginner in this field. I'm not a beginner to spirituality. I'm not a beginner to shamanism, not only in this lifetime, but all of my other lifetimes. At this point in time, I would consider three spiritual awakenings. And so I'm going to share those with you so that you can understand kind of the trajectory of how things can unfold. So my first spiritual awakening was about 15 years ago. It happened while I was in Maui. So I was a young mother. I had just graduated from four-year college, and my mom gifted me a trip. And I decided to go to Hawaii with my best friend. And while we were on Maui, I was at the bottom of a waterfall. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I felt the oneness that is the universe. I felt God, I felt love, what I think was for the first time, and I broke down. It was the most incredible experience of my life. I was completely sober for this experience. I was also like not actively doing a spiritual practice. But Hawaii, I'm coming to find, is actually a huge medicine place for me. So every time I go there, I actually have a pretty significant experience. But this was my first one. So after this happened, my relationship with my best friend almost immediately started to change. I started to move into a space of how do I chase this feeling? And shortly after coming home from that trip to Hawaii, my ex husband and I had made the decision to move there because in my mind, I thought, oh, this means this is where I'm supposed to be. And that's kind of a dicey thing when it comes to spiritual awakenings is assigning meaning or assigning significance to the catalyst. We'll talk more about that through this experience. So my experience in Maui was beautiful. It was life-changing. I came home and my ex and I were like, all right, let's move to Hawaii. Now, that choice, that trajectory actually turned out to be a very hard one. Looking back, I can see that I needed to leave my relationship even back then. We should have gotten a divorce. It was really toxic, really abusive. But instead, we were like, oh, everything's good, everything's fine. Let's move to Hawaii. We sold our house, we got rid of all of our stuff, we took our two kids, one of which was potty training, and our two dogs, and we actually relocated. And in that process, we became homeless and we lost everything. It was one of the hardest experiences of my life, and also one of the most fruitful. Living outside, not really having money for food, not knowing where you're going, not having a stable anything was earth shattering, but also very awakening. And then getting rid of all of your stuff, whether voluntarily or not, is an incredibly cleansing experience. So that move and that transition from my first spiritual awakening is what some might consider negative. I would not. I think it was a great process looking back. And I also have the hindsight of saying, oh man, I definitely should have just left my marriage instead of running from my problems to an island. So that happened, like I said, about 14, 15, I don't even know. And then we relocated to Florida after that. Florida was fine. It was about rebuilding ourselves. I got a new job. My ex got a new job. Our kids started to grow up. We really liked where we lived. We loved the school system. And things were generally okay for about 3 or 4 years until they weren't. And I again hit this point of, I can't do this. I'm not happy. I was a paralegal full time at that time, and I decided to go to massage therapy school. That was a wonderful experience. That's where many of my gifts opened up. I have a lot of gifts in my hands, very medical medium kind of abilities and physical healing abilities. And they started opening up at that time. Now, when I graduated massage therapy school, again, I was like, oh God, like this isn't what I want to do. Even though I was good at it, I had a full roster, I was making good money, I started my own business, my ex had a good job, like all things were in the green, except for me. Again, in hindsight, you look back and you're like, damn, I should have walked away. I was not happy. Why did I keep pushing? And that's when I entered my second spiritual awakening. That was a result of working with ayahuasca. I had a horribly traumatic experience with ayahuasca. I actually continued to have traumatic experiences with ayahuasca, and I will address that in another podcast, why I actually don't support wide use of ayahuasca and don't recommend it for most people. But my second awakening came as a result of an ayahuasca ceremony. I was initiated as a shaman, like formally by the spirits. My psyche broke open. It felt like I had gone through a birth canal in that process and came out the other end knowing who I was and what I was here to do. And that experience, quite honestly, sucked. But afterwards, I started to shed things in my life, people, work, lifestyle. I went vegan. I started doing yoga on a daily basis. I stopped drinking, and I felt fantastic. It was like the best era of my life. My teeth started to heal themselves. My body started to heal itself. It was really incredible. And then my gifts got more in tune. Like that's when the plants started talking to me. I started seeing things on a psychic plane. My mediumship abilities started coming in. And so it took everything that I had received in the last awakening and kind of took it a step deeper. Now, there was a very distinct moment in one of my meditations after that experience where the spirits told me, you're doing great. You can stay where you're at and you're going to help a lot of people and you'll be fine. Or you can go deeper and you'll help more people and you'll be a lot happier. And I thought, obviously I want to go deeper. That's my personality. And that's when they told me, okay, well, it's time to move and it's time to start a community. And they gave me 7 or 8 locations on a map and told me that I needed to relocate, build a community, and help more people. And so that's when my ex and I decided to move to the East Coast. We moved to Washington, Portland area. And again, initially it was great. Everything felt amazing and the stars aligned, the houses aligned. like the places that we were going to stay. It was a very, very magical experience until it wasn't. So shortly after we got to Washington, I stopped being vegan. I picked drinking back up, stopped doing yoga. It became a hustle of starting a business and getting the clients and networking and all those things. And my relationship really started to tank. That's when some nasty resentment and aggression and other like really not healthy things started to come to the surface. And that's when, honestly, the deepest shadow work initiated. I'm not going to go too deep into that because I have shared about my experience the last few years of my marriage in a couple other podcasts, and we don't need to hear about it again. So, all that was going on. Last year, just over a year ago now, I was in Peru. I was there for a few weeks. It was amazing. One of the things that I got to do down there was I had the opportunity to work with wachuma, which is a master plant. It is a cactus. Very different style ceremony than what I've worked with before. So we were outside hiking for like 8 hours in the mountains. I mean, it was just incredible. And as far as plant medicine goes, I had a very mild experience. I had all of my faculties. I didn't feel heavily influenced. Like I could feel the plant and I could feel the spirits in the land, but I always feel those things. So, I mostly just felt a little fuzzy headed and like I was kind of holding space for other people as well as dipping into the energy of that medicine. Now, on our way down from the mountain, my heart blew open and I felt that love again for the first time. And I bawled like tears of joy for probably multiple hours. And it was really, really beautiful. And I thought, oh my God, like, what did I do to deserve this? What is heart medicine even? Just like a totally different level of joy and love than I'd ever felt. It was really cool, really beautiful. Would I do Wachuma again? Would I sit in a Wachuma ceremony again? Probably not. The circumstances would have to be pretty specific because I generally try not to take plant medicine. Um, but, the experience was great. It wasn't until the next morning that the Kundalini started. So I woke up that next morning and I had energy rising from my base, explosive energy, mind you, um, rising up from my base in the lower couple chakras. I could feel it really strongly. And I generally, although I have body sensations, I generally don't specifically feel my chakras. Like it's just not a thing for me. In this case, I did. And that was also accompanied by the presence of a spirit of somebody that I knew. It was one of my clients. I'd been seeing him for a few months before I went to Peru, but he was like in my orbit during this process. When I woke up the next morning and the Kundalini started, he was there. Side note, as I talked about in my other podcast, he is actually going through a spiritual awakening at the same time. And so that's a whole other interesting side topic. So in Peru, my Kundalini initiated, and it was initially very intense physically, and that kind of slowed down, I don't know, within like a week or two, it kind of just normalized. There was no more intensity in my root. So what I'm going to share now is what's happened since then, what the Kundalini awakening looks like for me personally. I have read about these awakenings, and there's just so many different ways it can look and different symptoms people can have. And I've found everything that I've read super helpful. So I'm going to share my experience here. So when I got back from Peru, there was an incredible amount of purging. Emotionally, physically, there was also like a solidifying of who I am. And that's when my divorce started to initiate in earnest. That's when I asked my ex-husband to leave. It's when one of my kids moved out. I started to shed friends and colleagues and clients, and it was a full-blown purge. And I believe that that is what happens when our chakras start to kind of start moving naturally in a healthy way. They start spitting out stuff that we have stored there. So I also had an incredibly large amount of emotion moving through that was like just really heightened. But most of how it looked for me was kind of externally clearing stuff out. I did have heart attack symptoms for about 2.5 weeks in the mix here. Did go to the hospital at one point, and they said, well, based on what you're sharing, you should definitely be having a heart attack, but we can't find any evidence of it. And that is the shamanic illness piece of a spiritual awakening, is that you can experience physical sensations that are so intense and so real that you think that they're going to happen medically, and they don't. It's a little maddening. This is not the first time I've had heart attack stuff come up. It has come up before. Every time I'm doing an intense clearing of my heart space, I do get the heart attack symptoms, and I've had them recently too. So that's what happened right after the Kundalini first initiated. And then, of course, my life started to shift, and it was very clear, like, okay, we are leaving the West Coast. We're going back to the East Coast. And the only thing I could do was listen to the directions. So when I got to my parents' house, and I'm staying here temporarily because I am going to be doing ceremony around the country, it seems like, is what spirits are kind of showing me. So right now I'm temporarily staying in Central Florida, which I love. But when I got here, there was a really interesting sequence of events. So I essentially slept and meditated for the first several weeks that I was here. My nervous system was so shot from everything that I've been through in my relationship that it couldn't function and it couldn't regulate as it needed to. And so that had to happen first. Now, while that was happening, I was waking up in the middle of the night feeling gross. Like I have no other word to describe it but just gross. I felt sick to my stomach. Sometimes I had upset intestines. And I would keep waking up like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. I would be up for several hours, couldn't fall back asleep. And so I meditated. And that was just like my initial inkling of what to do. As I started doing intense meditation, and I'm talking like 3, 4 hours at a time, I started to feel energy running through my body. And I started to feel this grossness lift and move. My heart attack symptoms came back, and I would witness, like, if I was doing a heart opening exercise, the heaviness would lift or the restriction would lift. And after it would lift, I would have a massive emotional breakthrough. So, for example, one night I was having really bad heart pain, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. Am I going to have a heart attack? I don't have insurance. I don't have any money. Take me. I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. Because it is super intense. And I think part of this process is designed to run you down so that you do surrender to the extent that the spirits want you to surrender, so they can give you what it is that you actually need and want and ask for. Anyway, this process is happening, and I'm just like, okay, I'm done. And then I start feeling this masculine energy around me and in me and holding me and embracing me. And it feels like I have a partner there, except it's me. And the energy is telling me, like, I'm always here. I'm always here. You just have to lean in. And I felt so embraced and loved by myself. It was like I was holding myself, except I could literally feel pressure against my back and pressure against my side, like someone had had their arms wrapped around me. And then I leaned into it, and all of a sudden my heart broke open more, and I felt self-love in a depth or at a depth that I have never felt before. And I cried. I cried for like an hour and a half. It was the most beautiful, cathartic experience I think I've ever had. And, I care about myself. I'm compassionate. I observe, I witness, I accept. I have a lot of patience. But love, I don't know that I ever got there until maybe a week ago. Now, what happens after each of these emotional release is that belief systems start coming to the surface. So I have the physical sensation, and then I lean into it, and then I have the emotional release, and then under the emotion is an epiphany, right? This is the beauty of learning to surrender to the process, is you move through it so fast and you get to see how many layers are there. So this one specifically, I was seeing that there was like a lot of not good enough energy coming through. And Yeah, that's a big one. We all have it, right? But then I was seeing, oh, actually, I have this belief, but then this belief is messing up my world because I can't distinguish the difference between who I am, what I want, what I think, and what I feel. I'm going to say that again because it's significant. I could not distinguish the difference between who I am, what I want, what I think, and what I feel. So I'm having this massive experience, and I can see that everything is permeated with these emotions that I've never even seen before. I never knew they existed. They were literally repressed so deep under the surface that they didn't even pop up like momentarily. I didn't even know they were there. And I don't think I ever would have if I didn't come here and give myself the time and space to recover from what I've been through. Like my nervous system could not have taken it. My conscious mind could not have taken it. So that's kind of a side note. And then as a result of seeing this subconscious belief system that permeates my entire life, I started getting downloads about this, like what to do to break that down, what to do to identify the roots, how to fix it. And I designed an entire class around it. I just finished doing it this morning, and I'm going to run it through my meetup group. So head over there if you want to take my virtual class on unraveling the core belief of I'm not good enough, because spoiler, we all have that belief, at least in some part of our lives. So all of that came through the process of feeling, clearing, identifying, and surrendering. Now, another thing that's coming up really strong around the Kundalini awakening is the need to assert myself and command what I want. So, for example, I was having this kind of like medicine like experience the other day, or I think it's been a couple weeks now, and I felt really gross and really taken down. And I was like, damn it, this is not why I'm here. What is going on? And by asking that question, I got this response of, you're in victim. You're in victim energy right now. You are literally being victimized. And I was like, oh, hell no. That is not why I'm here. And so I asserted myself and I was like, no, I am here to work on this. And just that energy of empowerment, of stepping into me and commanding what was going on, the whole thing shifted. And I went into another layer of love and information about divine partnership that's coming in for me. So, as I'm sure you can start to see, like this process is big and it's not linear and it's freaking weird. I'm sure that there is so much I could share with you that I don't even think of because I'm moving through it so quickly. And that's kind of one of the more challenging things about this is being able to completely surrender so that things can move quickly. So because I'm not holding on to any one piece and I'm allowing it to hit me wave after wave after wave, I'm going through the layers very fast. And that's what I really try to encourage other people to do, my friends, my clients, my colleagues. When you're going through a big like transformation experience, the more you can surrender and let go, the faster it's going to move and the more you're going to get out of it. In this process specifically, there's also an intense amount of mystery. And that I've shared in previous podcasts is something I'm really not used to. It's very much like a Jesus take the wheel situation where I am in zero control. I have no idea what's coming. And the only thing that I can hang on to is my faith. Like, I trust that I am loved and supported. I know that I've put my desires out into the universe, and I know that somebody out there loves the crap out of me and they have my best interest in mind. And no matter what happens, I'm going to be taken care of. And I seriously thank God every day that I have that much faith, that I've been building up that faith for the last, 10 years, 15 years that I've been doing spiritual work. I don't know if I could do it without it. And so, through this process of which I'm very much still in, I'm still in the heart space activation. I can feel my throat as well is opening, and then my third eye is beginning to open too. And I am feeling and seeing a lot of angelic stuff. So I know my crown is on its way to being opened. My lower half is I think as opened as it's going to get at this point, but I'm certain there will be more later. um, so it's like half of me has reemerged with all of these emotions that have been running in the background, all of these core beliefs that I didn't even know that I had, that if you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have told you no, or yeah, they're mine, but now I know that they're actually my parents. Um, there's been so much that's happened just in the last few months, and it's still unfolding. What's also been revealed to me is that my work is just getting started. So I've had this nonprofit that I started 5 or 6 years ago. It was very successful. I really love running it, and I thought that that was like my life work. And the spirits are like, no, you are literally just starting. You are using 1% of your capacity, 1% of your abilities. And honestly, I can't even wrap my mind around that. But I am seeing glimpses of like big angelic work. Extraterrestrials have been making contact and revealing themselves. I'm seeing bits and pieces of X-ray vision and multidimensional sight, as well as being told to like get ready for larger crowds. Like I'm going to be at an expo this weekend. I have never done anything like that. They're like, you need to be around literally thousands of people and put yourself out there more. Scary, but awesome, I think. But with every spiritual awakening, you're getting closer to yourself, getting closer to God, getting closer to your heart, and shedding more of what you no longer need. You're also stepping more deeply into your role here as a human, and whatever that is for you. For me, it's a pretty big role. It's very international, it's very collective level. Um, I also do believe there's like divine partner coming in, and we're going to be doing work with collective masculine feminine partnerships, relationships, and that's going to be really interesting. And all of this is very exciting, and I try to remember when I'm in the throes of vomiting at 4 a.m. or calling my friends and like telling them that I can't take it anymore, like I don't know what to do, and there's nothing to do. Like you just got to be with it, you just got to ride it, and I'm learning to be so grateful for the time and space that I have to do that right now. In terms of spiritual awakenings, specifically the Kundalini, I don't recommend forcing this. I have been doing my I've been doing work on myself for quite some time, and this process has taken me to my knees. It has been beyond anything I could have ever expected. If I had to work a normal job, there's no way I'd be able to go to work. If I had to take care of kids, like there's just no way. And I think because I have this space and the timing is what it is, I can move through it relatively quickly. I do believe the Kundalini awakening typically takes people like 2 to 10 years to go through. I am rounding a year right now, and I can feel that I actually don't have that much time left to move through this one. So, highly don't recommend forcing it. I have also been consulted by several people who are in psychosis or some form of psychosis because they have tried to force an awakening in some way, shape, or form. And this is very much ego driven. Those circumstances are extremely hard to heal, and in most cases, spirit will not let me do healing because they're on a path. They're basically like on a path to suffering in order to humble them because their ego has gotten too big. And if they went straight to the healing space, they would actually do damage to other people. It's really fascinating. Um, well, the last thing I want to talk about is what has been helpful for me through this process because yeah, as you can imagine, it's scary. Like nobody enjoys hallucinating or purging every single night or you know, basically feeling like you're crazy, like you can't talk to anybody about it. So having someone to talk to has been number one. I have a few friends I can talk to about this. I do have a coach who's also wonderful, and I'm happy to give her information to people who want it. She works remotely from the West Coast. I journal like a madman. Journaling is one of my huge processes, and my processing power is intense. I move through things very quickly, very methodically, and that's one of the things that I'm going to share with people in my upcoming event. Um, you can find a link to that event in the community event section of sacredheartshaman.com. It is free. Donations are welcomed, of course, but I really just want to share my process of mind mapping in order to get to the bottom of belief systems so that you can uproot them. It's kind of a combination of self-coaching and shadow work that I just want to share. I've been doing an obscene amount of meditation, like I said, 3 to 4 hours per day. And I actually started doing that because I didn't feel like doing anything else. I didn't want to sit in bed. I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to overeat. I didn't want to go outside. Like, I sat with myself and I was like, all right, what do I want to do? And the message was very clearly like, we just want to meditate. We want to go into altered space. And that's why I started doing it. And it's been a game changer because it's helping me with the mindfulness, which I've done for years, mind you, but now we're going to a deeper level. So lots of meditation, lots of energy work. I've had to eat extremely well, spend time in the sun, making sure I get enough sleep at night when I'm not. That hour between 2 and 5 a.m. is always chaotic, but I do sleep around that or take naps during the day. And above all else is the surrender piece. Being able to surrender over and over and over again has been paramount to me moving through this easily-ish and quickly. And if you're having trouble surrendering, that's when you need to reach out for help. You need someone to help give you a new perspective or a coping mechanism or something that allows you to let your grip go. Usually, it's a part of you that is afraid to let go because of the unknown or because you're afraid you're not going to get something better or just the general control piece. But surrendering has been number one in my process. So bear with me on the podcast as my energy goes all over the place from grounded to being really tapped in. I can hear sometimes the podcast, the sound is super sensitive or there's like a lot of static. Listen, man, I don't feel like I have control over any of it. But I did want to share about my awakening because I'm sure other people are going through it too. I'm here if you have any questions, and thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.